Begin today the Gemara towards the bottom of Daf Ayin Hey Amud Beis, 12 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. So here the Gemara goes back to the beginning of the Pedic, where it spoke about a boat that's being sold, what's included in the sale. So here the Gemara will discuss the actual kinyan. How do you acquire a boat? So Itmer, we learned the following machlokes. Sfina, regarding a boat. Rav says, no, so here, before we see the opinions, the kinyan of the sfina that the Gemara is going to speak about is the kinyan of Meshicha. Meshicha is when you pull something, when you draw something into your possession. So Rav says this kinyan of Meshicha, kivin shemashach kol shehu, when you pull the boat, you take it and you move it out of its place where it is, even just a drop, kana, you acquire it, even though most of the boat is still in the same spot. Shmuel Amar, however, Shmuel says, Loikana, you don't acquire with Meshicha the boat, Ad Sheyimshoich Eskula, until you take the entire boat and you move it out of its position where it was. That the end of the boat is now out of the place where the beginning of the boat was, totally out of its previous position. Says the Gemara, Leime, shall we say, Kitanoi. That this machlokes of Rav and Shmuel is the same machlokes of Tanoim regarding the kinyan of an animal. So the Rashbami brings that there's a behema gasa and behema daka. There's large animals and small animals. The kinyan of large animals is with the kinyan of Mesira. So we'll see in a moment what Mesira is. And the kinyan of Meshicha is for small animals. So the Braisa explains, Ketzad b'Mesira, how is the kinyan of Mesira? Mesira literally means you give over or you hand over. So the kinyan is, Achza betalfa, if the buyer holds on to its hoofs, Besaira, to its hair, Be'ochiv shala, to a saddle on the animal, Be'shlif shala, to the packages on the animal, Be'prumbi yeshebipia, a bit that's in its mouth, Be'zuksha be'tzavara, or the bell that's on its neck. So kana, he acquires it. So according to the Rashbam's Pshat, by the kinyan of Mesira, the seller is not giving it over to the buyer. The seller says to the buyer, go ahead and buy it. And the buyer just grabs hold of any part of the animal, even without moving it. Just grabbing hold of it, that's the kinyan of Mesira. Now, Ketzad b'Meshicha, what's the kinyan of Meshicha? Meshicha is that you're drawing it towards you. You're taking it into your possession. It has to be actually a place, as we'll see soon. It can't be just in a place of Rishus Harab. It has to be a place which is more private, that you're taking it towards you, towards your Rishus. So by Meshicha, you have to draw and bring and move the animal to you. Either you call the animal and it comes, or he hits it with a stick and it runs to him. Kivin she'akra yad v'regel. So here, the Tanakama in this Braisa says, as soon as the animal lifted up a hand and a foot, meaning even if there is still another hand and foot of the animal, talking about the forelegs and the hind legs, even if one of them still remains in the ground, but the other ones are lifted up, kana, you acquire it immediately, even though it didn't totally move, because only one hand and foot moved, the other one still remained in its position. But that's enough of a movement for the kinyan of Meshicha. That in order for the animal to be kind of with Meshicha, the animal has to move its whole entire its whole entire being. According to the Rashbam's Pshat here, actually, it doesn't mean that you have to have the full movement of the animal out of its position of where it was, but as soon as the animal lifts up all four legs, that's considered to be the movement of Maloi Kaimasa that you're going to be kind of with Meshicha. So what do you see here? So it says the Gemara, Rav, it seems like Rav, when it came to the boat, says that if you move it on Mashahu, you kinda, that's like the Tanakama that says if the animal lifts up one yad v'regel, you kinda. Shmuel, Dama Kerebi. And Shmuel that says that you have to have the whole boat move out of its position is like what Rabbi is saying, or Rabacha that is, sorry. Shmuel, Dama Kereb Ache, that says that you have to, all four legs of the animal have to move. So the answer is no, it's not necessarily a comparison. You can't compare a boat to an animal. Rav will tell you, my opinion regarding the boat, that it's with a mashu, can even go according to Ravacha. By a balichayim, by a live animal, there Rav says, Ravacha that is says, the afagav, the akri yad v'regel, beduchte kaime. Over there we say that even if the animal lifted up one hand, 1 foot, but still the animal itself is in the same position. It like stood up a little bit. It lifted up a hand and a foot. But really the other hand and the foot that are still in the ground means that the animal didn't even move even one mashuhu. it's really still totally in the same position. Right. So therefore over there, reason why it has to move is because the fact that it's lifting up one hand and 1 foot, it didn't move at all. It still remains in its place. Therefore you're not going to be kaina. But by the boat, kivin the nodaba purta, when the boat moves just a little bit, nodala kula, the entire boat is moving. Even though it's not moved out of the previous position, but it is, the entire boat is moving. So therefore there, even Ravacha would agree that you're kaina. On the other hand, Shmuel says, Anod Amri Afilik Tanakama. I that say that by a boat you have to move it all out of its previous position, I can follow the opinion of the Tanakama. Ad kan lekama Tanakama ela b'Bali Chayim. By Bali Chayim, the Tanakama says when the animal lifts up a hand and a foot, even though it didn't move at all, it'll be enough. Why? When an animal is walking, so it begins by lifting up one hand and foot, and then it right away lifts up the other hand and foot to continue walking. That's the nature of how it walks. So as soon as it picks up the first hand and foot, even if it didn't move yet at all, but because it's right away going to pick up the other hand and foot, you're actually kaina before it picked up and then before it moved. When it comes to a boat though, by a boat, when you move it just a drop, it doesn't mean that now naturally it's going to continue moving. It doesn't naturally continue moving. You have to move it yourself more. So if you move it just a little and most of it remains in the position that it was before, there's no kinyan there.
I can see a comparison like that. A comparison like this, it's a small boat to an animal, but if the boat is big enough that it's a bias, it should encompass a bias. If it's a large enough boat, that it's a houseboat.
Okay. Depends on the size of the boat. Okay, I hear. Sagt the Gemara, Leime Kahani Tanoi. Let us say that the Machlokes of Rav and Shmuel is here in the Braise, the Machlokes of the following Tanoim. Okay, so the Gemara is going to bring the Braise. The Pshat in the Braise itself is not so clear, and then the Gemara will explain this, and then we'll see how we have here the Machlokes Tanoim, that's the Machlokes of Rav and Shmuel. So the Braise says that Tanya Sfina Niknes b'Meshicha. You acquire a boat with Meshicha. Rab Nosson says Sfina ve'oisius. If you're trying to acquire a boat, and then he says another thing. Oisius literally means letters. What this is referring to is a document that's written in it. Let's say a loan, and the lender has this document, and he's going to sell it to someone else, and that now buyer will have the rights to collect the loan. That's what you're selling here. Niknais b'Meshicha, you sell them also with Meshicha, and ubishtar, and you also have to write a shtar for this sale. And the simple pshat here of this brayso would mean that whether you're selling a boat, or if you're selling a shtar, you need both. There has to be the kinyan of Meshicha with a shtar as well. Okay, so now the Gemara will clarify what this brayso means. So first the Gemara asks, Oisius man dechar shmayu. When the brayso Rab Nosson brings up Oisius, the letters, meaning the shtar, who mentioned that? Why is Rab Nosson bringing up the inyan of a shtar? The Tanakama is talking about how you acquire a boat. So Rab Nosson, if he's arguing, he should argue about a boat. Why is he bringing up the inyan of a shtar here? So says the Gemara, the first point to explain this brayso is, there's something missing here in the lashon of the brayso, v'hachi ketani. And this is how you have to understand the brayso. The Tanakama is saying, this is how you have to read the brayso. It's really missing in the words of the brayso. Sfina niknes b'Meshicha. Tanakama spoke about the boat first, and he said that you acquire a boat with Meshicha. And then he said, v'oisius b'Mesira. And when it comes to a shtar, the letters and the shtar that you want to sell, and to sell not just the paper, but you're selling the whole loan and the shibud that's in it for the buyer, so that is not through Meshicha. That's through Mesira, by handing it over. And then on that, Rab Nosson argues, Rab Nosson is Sfina ve'oisius, both, whether it's a boat, whether it's a shtar, nikna is b'Meshicha. You acquire it through Meshicha by pulling and taking it into your possession. Ubishtar, and with shtar as well. You have to write a shtar for the kinyan to take effect. So that's one point there. But now the Gemara asks on this, shtar l'sfine lomeli. Why is it saying here in the brayso that according to Rab Nosson, you have to write a shtar for the boat? Why do you have to write a shtar to acquire a boat? Metaltalihi. The boat is metaltlin. It's a movable object. And by a movable object, there is no kinyan of shtar. By a movable object, you acquire it just through the Meshicha. Shtar is a kinyan that's used usually for karka, not for a boat. So elalav, don't you think that hachi ketani? That now we have to read the brayso as follows. Sfina, the Tanakama is saying, Sfina niknes b'Meshicha, you acquire a boat through Meshicha, v'oisius b'Mesira. and you acquire a star through Mesira. And on that, Rab Nosson argues, Rab Nosson Oimer Sfina b'Meshicha. A boat you acquire with Meshicha. And va'oisies b'shtar. And in order to acquire a star, you acquire it by writing another star in it. Okay, so now what comes out? That regarding the star, we can see what Rab Nosson is arguing. The Tanakama said you acquire a star through Mesira, and Rab Nosson is saying that you acquire a star through writing another star in it. What are you acquiring in the star? You're not just acquiring the star itself, you're acquiring the loan which has the shibud on a karka. So in order to acquire that shibud of the karka of the star, so you write another star. That's what Rab Nosson is saying. Okay, but the question though is, Sfina b'Meshicha haina Tanakama. When Rab Nosson says that you acquire a boat with Meshicha, why is he saying that? He's saying the exact same thing as the Tanakama. If he's not arguing on the Tanakama regarding how you acquire a boat, both hold that you acquire it through Meshicha, so why is Rab Nosson even speaking about that? So therefore the Gemara concludes, don't you think that they both hold you couldn't be Meshicha, but the Rav Ushmuel Ikke ben Ayil. The argument here is what the Meshicha is. The Tanakama holds the Meshicha has to be like Shmuel, that you have to completely pull it and take it out of its previous position. And then Rab Nosson is coming to add and say that no, even less is okay. That even if you pull it just a little, a mashu, you'll be kaina. That's how the Rashbam learns that Rab Nosson is coming to add and say that you don't have to do as much, even if you pull it just a little, you'll be kaina. That would be their machlekes. So the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. Loi, the Kula Alma, everybody here, both the Tanakama, Rab Nosson, Ike Rav, Ike Shmuel. Either they both hold like Rav or they both hold like Shmuel. Ubesvine, Kula Alma le Pligi. They don't argue regarding a boat. They both agree that it's the same kinyan of Meshicha. Ki pligi ba'isius. What's their argument only regarding how you acquire a star chayv? This is what Rab Nosson is saying to the Tanakama. Bisfina vade medinalach. When it comes to a boat, I agree to you that the kinyan is just with Meshicha. So that's when Rab Nosson says Sfina b'Meshicha, he's telling the Tanakama that I agree to you. And ba'isius, when it comes to acquiring Isis, the letters of a star with the whole shibud in it, if it's not enough just Mesira, like the Tanakama said, if you also write a star to acquire this document, it'll be kaina, and if not, not. So therefore, there's no raya here in this praise that the argument about how you acquire the boat, the machlekes of Rav and Shmuel, is the machlekes of these Tanaim. So what the Gemara says, the hani tanoi. Here you have the machlekes of these Tanaim, in other words, the machlekes of Rab Nosson and the Rabbanan here in this Braise regarding how you acquire a star. Is it enough just by handing it over, just Mesira, or do you need also to write a second star on this star? So it's machlekes of these Tanaim. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braise, Oisius Niknes b'Mesira Divrei Rebbe. Rebbe says you acquire a star just with Mesira. The Chachamim say that it's not enough Mesira. Ben kosav v'loy mosar, if you would write a star for the buyer, that you're selling him this star, but you didn't hand it over to him, or ben mosar v'loy kosav, or if you just did mesira, you handed it over to him, but you didn't write a star for this kinyan. Loy kana, you would not acquire, at sheyichtayv v'yimsar. Like Rab Nosson said, you have to have both ksiva and mesira. Okay, so that's the opinion. So you see here, the machlokes of Rebbe and the Chachamim is the same machlokes of the Tanakama and Rab Nosson. So it comes out that the Tanakama holds like Rebbe, and Rab Nosson holds like the Chachamim. So says the Gemara, B'maya kimte Rebbe. You're saying that the Tanakama holds like the opinion of Rebbe, but if that's the case, Sfina nami tikni b'Mesira. So when it comes to a boat, the kinyan of the boat should be just with Mesira. In the Braisa before, we quoted that the Tanakama says, both actually, the Tanakama and Rab Nosson both said that how do you acquire a boat with Meshicha? And Meshicha means you have to pull it. Mesira, you don't have to pull it. Mesira, like we saw by the animal, Mesira is you grab hold of it. You don't have to pull it out of its place where it is. So now the Gemara here is going to bring that according to Rebbe, you acquire a boat just with Mesira. Here there's a very big discussion in the Taisvis and in the Rishonim regarding these two kinyanim of Mesira and Meshicha. Which kinyan is sort of a better kinyan? The Rashbam over here says that Meshicha is a better kinyan than Mesira. You're pulling it out of its place, and therefore the kinyan has to be done dafka through Meshicha and not through Mesira when you're holding on to it. Taisus over here starts in the beginning, he asks on the Rashbam, what does it mean it's a better kinyan? Taisus says, is this like mitzvahs? That you have to ask what's better, what's not? If it's an effective kinyan, it works. What difference does it make that if it's better? There's no kinyan to be mahadir in this kinyan. So, but the Rishonim explained that according to the Rashbam, if it's a better kinyan, then you have to do the better kinyan because that's the derech. Chachamim were masakin to do these specific types of kinyanim, and if this is the better kinyan, this was the derech of how the kinyan was done. So if you don't do the better kinyan, it will not be effective. So that's the discussion over here. Which kinyan should you do, meshicha or mesira? And again, as according to the Rashbam, meshicha is a better kinyan. Tosfos, however, disagrees. Tosfos says mesira is a better kinyan. It really also depends how mesira is done. I mentioned before, according to the Rashbam, mesira means that the seller just tells the buyer, you can go ahead and buy it. He doesn't give it to him, actually. He just tells him, you can go and buy it, and then the buyer just grabs hold of it. That's mesira. But there's another pshat of mesira. Mesira could also mean literally that you give it over, that the buyer is giving it from his hand into the seller's, the seller's giving it to the buyer's hand. When it's going from hand to hand, then that's a much stronger kinyan than just meshicha when the buyer himself is pulling it and taking it in his possession. Okay, so what does it say here in the Braise regarding the kinyan of a boat, according to Rebbe? So the Tanya, we learned in the Braise, Sfina niknes b'mesira divrei Rebbe. Rebbe holds that you buy a boat just by mesira. The Chachamim say, Loi kana, you don't acquire, Achiyim shechena, until you pull it, and by pulling it, it always means that you have to take it into your possession. That's what the buyer has to have a place which is designated for him, is to be pulling it into his possession. Or if you don't have such a place, you can rent that place, and then when you rent that place, how do you acquire it? There's a kinyan of chotzer. If something is in your courtyard, something is in your possession, you acquire it there. Okay, so here we see a machlekes of Rebbe and the Chachamim, how you acquire a boat. So the Gemara is asking now, if we explained before that the Chachamim and the other Braise hold like Rebbe when it comes to a star, that you kain it just with mesira and without writing another star on that, so he should also agree to Rebbe regarding how you acquire a boat. So the Tana before in the Braise said you acquire a boat with meshicha, but here we see that Rebbe holds not meshicha. Rebbe says that you don't even need that. Mesira is good enough. So the Gemara answers, it depends where you are. Like Kashi, it's not a question. Here, when it says that you acquire with mesira, that's because they're in the Reshus Harabim. It's a public domain. You can't pull and take the boat into your possession. It's it's not your property. It's not a private area that you can take it to your possession. So there, the only way you kaina is with mesira. And kan besimta. And here, it's talking about a simta, which is a side place on the side of the Reshus Harabim, which is more private. So even though it's not mamish your private domain, but it's a more private area, so over there you could have the kinyan of Meshicha, where you designate a spot and you pull the animal to your spot where you're standing, and that's the kinyan of Meshicha. So the Gemara asks on this, what are you explaining this Braise here? Now, what is it speaking about? Reshus Harabim. That the reason why Rebbe says you kind of be mesira is because it's in a public place, so therefore you can't be kind of be meshicha. But how could you say it's speaking about the Reshus Harabim? Aim is Seifa. What did we just read before? What did it say in the Seifa of the Braise? That the Chachamim say leikana achiyim shechena, that you only acquire it when you pull it into your possession. So v'i Reshus Harabim, if this is speaking about a Reshus Harabim, miman oiger. From who is this person in a Reshus Harabim renting that space to pull it into his possession? If it's in a Reshus Harabim, there is no Meshicha here. V'su Meshicha b'Reshus Harabim mi kanya? Could you be kaina in a Reshus Harabim with the kinyan of Meshicha? It's not possible for there to be a kinyan of Meshicha in the Reshus Harabim. According to one gersa is here in the side of the Gemara, they have the other gersa that you add over here. Oyach yiskar es mekaima. So first the Gemara is asking on yiskar es mekaima, that Chachamim say that you rent the space. From who are you renting the space? That's one question. Another question it's asking regarding Meshicha, that Meshicha has to be to a private, to your domain. How are you in the Reshus Harabim? That's impossible. And the Gemara continues, V'habai v'Rav Damri Tarvayu, Abaye and Rav both said, Mesira kaine b'Reshus Harabim. The kinyan of Mesira, that's a kinyan that works in the Reshus Harabim, Ubechatze she'ein shel shneim, or in a courtyard that doesn't belong to both, not the buyer or the seller. But Meshicha kaine besimte ubechatze she'ein shel shneim. The kinyan of Meshicha, that will be a kinyan that works if it's a private place, it's a side place of the Reshus Harabim, or it's a chatzah that belongs to both of them. So there you can acquire that chatzah, you have an ownership in that chatzah, so you can pull it into your Reshus. V'hagbah, the kinyan of hagbah, when you lift something up, that's a kinyan that's kind of b'chol makim. That's a kinyan that's kind of everywhere. That's a a very good kinyan that's effective wherever you are. You just lift it up, right? Okay, so this kinyan of Akba is really the best kinyan. Taisus actually points out before in Amar Aleph, when the Gemara spoke about acquiring a star, and it said that how do you acquire a star? With Mesira, by handing it over, whether you physically hand it over or whether the buyer just grabs hold of it. Why doesn't the Gemara say that the kinyan should be Hakba, that you lift up these shtaris? That should be the best kinyan. And as I mentioned before, the best kinyan is the kinyan that you have to do. Taisus says that you must say the Gemara in Amar Aleph that talks about the shtaris, it's talking about a whole bundle of shtaris, a big bag or a whole bundle of shtaris that is not so easy to lift up. So therefore, you just take that's Mesira, you just grab hold of it. Okay, so the question over here is, how do we learn Pshat on this Braisa? If it's talking about the Rishus Harabim, how are the Rabbanan saying that in the Rishus Harabim there's a kinyan of Meshicha or by acquiring it through renting the chutzah, renting the area and being kind of that way? It's in the Rishus Harabim. So the Gemara explains, what does the Rabbanan here mean when he says that you have to pull it? Or what did the Rabbanan mean when they say they have to rent the space? This is what they meant to say. What the Chacham was saying is you can't acquire this, whatever it is, in a Rishus Harabim. The only way to acquire it is by Meshiches. What are you going to have to do? There is no Meshicha in the Rishus Harabim, so you're going to have to pull it from the Rishus Harabim to the Simta, to the side place of the Rishus Harabim, and there you'll acquire it. And if you are acquiring an animal in the possession, in the place of the seller, so then loikana, you won't acquire it. It has to be the buyer's spot. So he has to rent from him that space in order for him to acquire it. So basically it comes out that what the Rabbanan is saying over here is that there is no option of the kinyan of Mesira B'chlal. The only kinyan that you can do is just Meshicha. And even when you're under Rishus Harabim, the only thing you can do is pull it into your possession, or by the kinyan of Chatzar, by acquiring that spot. So if so, the Gemara asks, Leime, shall we say that Abaye v'Rave, the Omri Kerebi, that Abaye and Rave, what did Abaye and Rave say before? That in a Rishus Harabim, you do acquire with Mesira. So it seems like that they're paskening like Rabbi. Rabbi was the one that said that in the Rishus Harabim, you acquire just by Mesira. You don't have to pull it into your private place. So why would Abaye and Rave pasken like Rabbi and not like the Chachamim, the Rabbim, the Chachamim? Answers the Gemara, Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi says, no, Chachamim are not saying that it's impossible to acquire in the Rishus Harabim. It depends what the case is. If the seller tells the buyer, go and acquire it, hachanami. So then even the Rabbanan would agree that you can acquire in the Rishus Harabim itself. You don't have to pull it into your own private space. You can be kind of with Mesira in the Rishus Harabim. Once you told them, according to the Rashbam, so then the buyer just grabs hold of it, and that's the Mesira. You kind of, even according to the Rabbanan and the Rishus Harabim. Over here, when the Rabbanan say that you're not kind of with Mesira and the Rishus Harabim, the Amalei Leich Mishoichukni, when the seller clearly uses the expression, go and be Meishach, go and pull it. So there is the Machlekes of Rebbe and the Chachamim, whether you can be kind of in the Rishus Harabim or you have to pull it into your space. Mar Savar, the Chachamim's opinion is Kepeda, that he's being particular about this. Because the seller used this expression of Mishoich, he's saying that you only can acquire if you actually pull it into your possession. But Mar Savar, according to the Rebbe, Mara Makamulai, he's just giving him an option. He's telling him that you can acquire it by being Meishach, but it's not Dafke. He's not particular that it should be Dafke through Meshicha. So that's the Machlekes Beneged to the kinyan of the Svina, a boat, or anything else that's inside the Rishus Harabim. Okay, the Gemara continues here, going back here to the case of the Shtar. So we'll see this Mishnah tomorrow. Connected.